Hello and welcome to this session where we're looking at digital risk, digital transformation and its impact on security. I'm Duncan Brown and with me is Venkat Ramakrishnan, and today we're going to take a look at digital risk from the side of the business. So welcome Venkat.
Hi Duncan.
Nice to speak to you again. So we spoke at the recent US Embassy event in London. You very graciously came along to speak to some of our customers. So really, we're just going to talk about what we talked about at the event. So give everyone a flavour of your experience in managing digital transformation projects or programs.
Sure, Duncan. So I currently play the role of Director Advanced Technologies Group within Harman. So it's a division that works on cutting edge technologies in the data space, helping our clients run large digital transformation projects, leveraging big data, cloud, and machine learning technologies.
Okay.
I'm personally an open source enthusiast and I like torturing data for insights. And I've played several roles throughout my career, be it in business functions, IT functions, in consultative capacity, and more recently in the space of data science, I'm working with a marquee travel client of ours. So having worked across domains and technologies, I've dealt with regulators directly and indirectly. And obviously, during these programs, I will have to interact with the data protection officers, compliance teams, infosec teams, other risk function-related teams, while evangelizing, designing, and implementing these programs. So that's a brief about my background. So I've worked with banks. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I mean, what kind of companies have you been working with?
Oh yeah, so I mean, if you for the last 15 years, I've been only in this space. So I started my career with financial industry in India. So I started on the business side where I was actually selling insurance, and then after that, I moved into the data space with Citibank. There we, in the analytics team, we were building models that were predicting credit card loan, how to manage your customers' wealth management, and so on and so forth. We built CRM capabilities for the bank, and then moved to the exciting space of cloud. So when I moved to UK about 5 years back, started consulting with a merger program of two of the biggest betting and gaming companies here. So I was a part of the clean team that was looking at synergies across both the brands.
The M&A team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was a core team that was looking at all the systems, the backend systems, their data platforms, what kind of reporting do we need on day one, what kind of insights we can leverage from that platform, and we went live when the merger also went live. Then from there, I went on to work with a £7 billion top line lottery provider in UK. There we were modernizing. Yeah, lottery. Quite substantial. They had 50,000 plus retailers, and they had quite a big digital footprint also. So we were modernizing their data platform, wherein we were building applications on cloud, which can detect players who were overplaying. It was also doing a lot of marketing campaigns. It was integrating into some downstream systems on the CRM side. From there, my next project was with a US state lottery, wherein we built a similar platform, but this time as cloud matured, we used more than 90% plus serverless components, thereby reducing operational overheads greatly. And obviously with serverless and cloud services comes its own set of challenges on compliance, risk, data protection, privacy, and so on. So I had worked very closely with the infosec teams on both sides, both on the customer side as well as internally. And the platform that we finally built was pen tested, audited, and it was quite robust. More recently, with a travel conglomerate, we are building an ML platform that predicts their repeat customers, that builds lead scoring models for some of their brands. So that's my journey so far.
Okay. So very eclectic, lots of industries there for banking, lotteries, betting, tourism, and so on. So,
travel,
good, absolutely, good breadth of industries. So we hear a lot about this digital transformation thing, and it's a bit of a slippery topic. What do you think the essence of digital transformation is?
Well, there are many definitions for digital transformation that's out there in the net, but one thing that caught my attention was it's something that closes the gap between digital customers and making an analog business move towards serving such digital customers. But a lot of definition is around digital transformation as a destination, but to me it is a journey. there are a lot of changing preferences of customers. Brand loyalty seems to be a thing of a past. People are after instant gratifications, and companies that are not able to adopt and evolve is shown the door out, right? Uh, it's not just in IT world, but even in consumer preferences, people are moving from a capex heavy model to an opex heavy model. So instead of owning a car, they are hailing a taxi these days because that's convenience. So from capex, they are moving to opex. The same with with the advent of ghost kitchens. Uh, Apps like Deliveroo, Uber Eats. So the footfalls in the restaurants are reducing, and people want convenience at a click of a button. So to me, if a business has to stay
Mm.
relevant, this digital transformation is a continuous process. It is not a destination, but it's more like a journey in itself, where people, business processes, technology, and the evolving nature of compliance and risk functions, all of them come together as a team, and they have a cultural change in the organization itself to enable innovation and deliver customer value forever and forever, so that that organization stays relevant to the end consumer it serves for a longer period of time.
And I notice you haven't mentioned at all technology in your description of digital transformation. It's all about the business. It's all about transformation and business enablement and so on. And I think sometimes we in the technology industry hear the term digital transformation and particularly the word digital and say, oh, that must be technology related. That means us, and we get very excited and we think it's it's primarily a technology project. And of course, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, yes, in a way, I mean, technology is more like a reason for you to change. It's more like a means to an end rather than an end in itself.
Right.
So you cannot do a digital transformation program without a business transformation program, right? Most of these transformation programs today are anyway business led. So if you don't have a strong business use case, technology is just an excuse to solve a business problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have a business problem, you can use multiple technologies to solve it. There is no one right path. So you should never start with technology. You should rather start with a business use case, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And obviously, because it's related to business, it is inevitably based on data, and I sense that the nature and the scope of data is changing, and in many ways is driving digital transformation. What are your thoughts on the evolution of data?
Sure. So, for a transformation program to kick in, right, that can be multiple motivations, and in most cases, there is data at the center of it. A small
Mm,
company which is going from retail to digital might just say that I'm going to develop a website or an app for the brand, and that is digital transformation for me. Whereas a large traditional company might be wanting to move their entire IT operations and applications infrastructure onto cloud, which could be a significantly large program. Uh, but again, data is the center of all these transformation programs in most cases, and it will involve at some point of time or the other an end customer endpoint impact. So it can change the way the customer interacts with the brand, the way you collect data about him, the way you process his data, and so on and so forth. So for me, if you take a couple of decades or even 10 years back, the growth of data was slightly more linear, right? So when an IT team looks at their landscape, they would be sizing their infra in a way that if my business grows by X%, my infra also has to grow linearly in order to cope up with that. But
mm,
that's not the case anymore, because it's not just OLTP sources, upstream or downstream sources that collects data. There are a lot of tertiary source systems from which we can potentially glean non-transactional, non-financial data about the customers.
mm.
So with the advent of, say, browse data, tag management tools, cookies, SDK, social data, Wi-Fi, beacons, location services, today we know more and more about the customer, and there is a potential for us to even start gleaning customer data even before he actually purchases anything from us. So a brand that has just started can just look at their prospects browse data and build models around it. So this linear transactional data growth has now become exponential in nature, and customer activity and the digital footprint of that customer is also expanding. So which means that you can stitch his behavior on and off the site over a period of time. So if he purchases something and then he comes back and browse, I will still know that he is in
Mm,
market with me.
mm,
Uh, it's not just on the data collection piece, but also on the way that we interact with the customers have also changed. Uh, things like email campaigns and snail mail campaigns and inbound calling channel, outbound calling channel seems a little traditional now, because you can target customers in a highly personalized fashion. You can personalize site content, you can personalize email content, you can do app notifications, you can do browser push, you can do paid media, you can do interstitials, then there are chatbots, there are programmatic displays, there are rich inbots, in-app messaging. So there are multiple avenues in which we can, as a brand, potentially talk to the customer when he's in a purchase journey with us. So all of this has kind of evolved the scope of data in a very, very big way.
Yeah, and you can see the fundamental changes in the way that organizations relate to their customers. By scooping up all this data, you can provide a much richer experience, which sounds great. My guess is that that comes with some challenges or some new obligations. You know, I'm going to talk about data and privacy here, but you know, what are some of the broader challenges in doing this for within organizations?
Well, any transformation program is hard. We have seen so many programs not going as planned. You would have heard customers saying that I started a journey with X budget, but it went say 5x, and I didn't even achieve half of what I wanted to achieve. That's because of many reasons. One is technology challenges. When I mean technology challenges, it's like there are multiple ways to solve the same problem. It takes a long time for a company to decide what is a stack that I'm going to get into. And there will always be a period of time where there will be a bit of back and forth between IT and the risk functions and the people within IT as to what is the tools and choices that we need to make. And then there are longer lead cycles on procuring those tools or procuring people or vendors or software services providers who can come and implement such programs.
Sure.
On the people front also, what I have seen in some organizations is when you hire external vendors or external service providers, the internal people will still be tasked with the challenge of keeping the lights on the existing application. So
Sure.
they will not have enough bandwidth and time to actually learn the new technology and work along with these external consultants to build a new platform. So by the time the new platform is built, there is nobody on the other side to actually pick up the platform and run with it. That's one. So it's a little tough, and so there is a steep learning curve, there is a bandwidth issue, and there is also a challenge of keeping the existing applications running for a longer period of time. Then there are investment challenges. So even though people say that cloud can save a lot of money because it's moving from capex to opex, it is true, but we have to implement it and plan it right. So right from day one. So earlier, IT cost as a function was managed centrally, but today with the advent of cloud, it's a cultural change wherein every person, right to the developer level, should know what is the cost that he is incurring by using these cloud services. Otherwise, a wrong query fired might actually cost a lot more than what it would have been in the traditional sense. So people have to be aware on what they are using, what services they are using, what is going to cost, and in places where they can use cloud services to save money, they should do it. Things like simple things like reserved capacities, or automating machine uptimes and downtimes, switching off machines when it is not required. All these are like cultural things which were not there earlier when we were working in a data center based IT infrastructure. So there are many such challenges, which is making these programs harder and harder. It's more about awareness, cultural change, and making people know what they are doing, and also creating an environment where they have the bandwidth to learn and adopt and help in these programs, along with the external team that's doing it.
Yeah, and let's talk specifically then about some of the data and privacy challenges that a digital transformation program can introduce.
Yeah, so with cloud or any new tech stack, right, or any SaaS oriented systems that you might put as a part of the transformation program, we need to be very clear on what is that we are going to use that particular system for. What are the kind of customer information that's going to flow in? What are the guardrails or perimeter protection that we need to put in? Who have access? How are we going to control any data leakages? So it's important that we write those data privacy policies and data governance policies upfront before choosing the vendor. And then on an ongoing basis, how do we ensure that there are triggers and alert mechanisms built around that ecosystem so that if there is something, we would be able to prevent it rapidly. right?
Mm-hmm.
So the call to action and all of that needs to be done upfront. So the challenges are quite different, because earlier, if it was data center, your own network, and so on and so forth, there's a lot of a lot more control that you used to have on your infrastructure. But with SaaS or service providers, it's difficult to know what is happening inside, right? So it's a very different world when you move to cloud.
Sure. And presumably then there's a key role for data protection officer, for InfoSec professionals, risk professionals in this kind of area. I mean, how do you see that, and how do you see the interaction between those people that I guess are trying to protect the organization from external threats or from compliance, not protect them from compliance obligations, but make sure that they stick to their compliance obligations. How do we make sure that they are engaged in digital transformation and not kind of left to being an afterthought?
Yeah, so there is a bit of myth here that people carry, especially on the business side and IT function side, that the data protection officers or the risk officers are out there to stall or stop the program.
They're often seen as blockers, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we hear that
exactly.
a lot.
Yeah, so I've heard things like, InfoSec will not approve of this design, so there is no point talking about a new technology to them. So it's usually, we versus they kind of a conversation. But to me, I see it as a pyramid where there are, three corners. On one side, I see the business and product owners. The other side, I see the technology and the ops team. And the third corner is the custodians or the guardians group, the chief risk officers, InfoSec officers, and so on. And here I would like to use the analogy of a manual transmission car. So you have an accelerator, brake, clutch, and data is your fuel, or the stack that you're going to put is the fuel that is going to power your organization. So
Okay.
your business and product owners are your accelerators. They want to move the needle, they want to do something, and hence the transformation program kicks in. Your technology and operations are your clutch, because they are going to shift the gear up or down, right? And the custodians and guardians are the brakes, but if brakes in a good way. So brakes are not there to stop you, but if you think about it, brakes are there to give you the confidence to go fast, because without a brake in the car, you will never be able to control the car. You will never have the confidence to go fast. So that's how we need to start seeing the risk function. They are there to help you be successful. They are there to help you move fast with such programs, but at the same time have help you if you're going to go wrong, or prevent you from an accident, right? So that is the perception change that needs to happen. And if we start engaging the risk function right from day one, when I say day one, right from the stage of writing the use case, the business case, what is the kind of ROI that we are going to put in, what is the intention, we will be able to have a good segue into their world of thinking, like what are the legal aspects that I need to think into, what are the privacy policies that I need to think into, what are the kind of security perimeter that I need to use when I'm going to build an architecture. So it's very important that we engage right from day one, rather than put out an architecture blueprint and then go to them for an approval as an afterthought, right? So they should not just be a checkbox, but rather they should be a part of the program itself. So that's what I think will work and has worked in most cases for us.
I love the analogy of accelerator or clutch brake. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of organizations will identify their particular role in that triangle. So I'm kind of boiling it down to practical advice. What are you seeing as good practice or best practice in digital transformation programs that you think could extend to all organizations?
Yeah, so I think one major thing that has worked for us, in fact, there are a few things, but I will start with the most important one, is to have a full-time representative from the risk function into the program, right? Rather than them being outsiders or just part of the review boards. Having them as a full-time and being costed to the project will really help. You'll be surprised, but in some cases, I have seen that the risk officers and the infosec officers themselves have given us a lot of architectural ideas, and that has saved us a lot of time in terms of going back and forth with them for design approvals. So
Interesting.
about
So they
30 to
actually
40.
add value into the process rather than
Yeah.
just making sure that you're kind of the brooding, lurking person with a clipboard that's making sure you're doing things right. They're actually adding value to the project itself.
Yes, yes. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised when one of the infosec officers gave me technology choices that I need to make, and and in the end, when I finally finished the blueprint, about 30 to 40% of the choices that we made were actually driven by infosec. So imagine a scenario where if I hadn't engaged them, I would have gone through multiple reviews with them before nailing down the design, and that would have, I would have spent about 6-7 months before finishing the design itself. So it's important that to believe that they can add value, not just in technology, but even in marketing use cases. So I remember where one of the marketers wanted to collect certain type of data using certain technique. But a simple question from the infosec officer saying, why do you need to collect this data when it is already being collected elsewhere, ensured that data redundancies do not happen. So we don't store the same data in multiple places, right?
Yeah, which is a requirement under GDPR, and I mean just good practice anyway. So it's good that they're having that positive impact. Interesting example, yeah.
Yeah. And in another incident, usually when we don't engage with them, right, when we go just to the reviews, what does happen is there will be long-winded passive sentences that the infosec officer rattles off, saying that this is how the legal documents or the GDPR documents say, which we seldom understand. And then post that meeting, I will get an email with a lot of hyperlinks. But engaging them right from day one means that they will help me interpret what it actually means, so in simpler terms, right? So that kind of helps. So that's one thing that really helps, getting them as a part of the program. And second thing is write a proper data governance policy quite early in the life cycle of the program itself. So simple things like when you are going to process data or when you're going to store data, what is the type of encryption that you need to do? What are the perimeter protection? What are the user access controls? How are you going to do AD authentication? What are the regulatory guidelines that affect this particular piece of program? What are the design patterns that they like? Like, is it going to be push versus pull, or do you need to have a buffer queue in between? These kind of high level design elements or guardrails that if they are put forward right from day one itself, it becomes a lot more easy for us to follow a consistent pattern when we design the final architecture. So I think it's absolutely fine to be transparent with InfoSec and have a lot of discussions upfront, have a lot of confrontational and tough conversations on either side at the beginning of the program than later. So that's very, very important, having the transparency built. Another thing also that we need to be very clear and start working right from the beginning of the transformation program itself is to catalog and standardize data taxonomies. Funnily enough, the business matrices and KPIs, right, are different in different systems, even within the same part of the organization. And it becomes very difficult when you try to implement a data privacy program or try to build auditability and traceability in such programs. So things like, say, an active customer definition. For a marketer, it would mean that somebody who has browsed in the last 12 months because he wants to build a larger audience to target people. Whereas for finance, it will be a customer who has done a material transaction with me in the last 12 months, right? Because otherwise he's not a part of my balance sheet. That's about a simple metric having different definitions in different functions. There can be the same definition that exists across different functions, but can be called by different names. So that's also important to capture. So once we have this, data taxonomy, properly cataloged, then implementing any privacy policy on top of that across the entire architecture or the system becomes a lot more easier. So two functions will be able to talk in the same language. two systems will be able to talk in the same language. So that builds a lot of auditability, traceability, and InfoSec also likes to have such conversations because it's thoroughly consistent for them to also interpret the laws for us in simpler terms, right?
Interesting.
So at the end of it, even though it's a little painful to begin with, when we ask people to document what they are doing, at the end of the program, you will have a well-documented system. So that can be a good takeaway for us.
Good. Excellent. Venkat, that's been absolutely fascinating, and I note that we've barely talked about security in this session, and I think that's the way it should be sometimes, because we remember that security is one of these supporting functions. So a really strong message: get involved early in a digital transformation from the security or risk point of view. But it's not about us; it's about business transformation. That was a message that came across loud and clear. I love the accelerator clutch brake analogy. I'm going to pinch that if you don't mind and use it.
No worries at all. Feel free to use it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Venkat, thanks so much for your time. Thanks again for doing the US Embassy event for us as well. And thanks everyone for listening.
Pleasure talking to you, Duncan. Thank you.